PFM team is
Vice
sitting
chair
right here.
shouldn't he?
So where's the PFM team?
They're
They
going to
were
be
right
live
up there,
here.
now they disappeared.
Oh, going to be on.
Yeah, the ghosts like in the
Let's see,
Haunted Mansion.
Steve, let's see. How do I get your picture up here? Let's see.
Kids are out. You just started.
There should be a little two-bar
What do you got?
on the upper right-hand corner of the,
There you are.
video.
But, you know, we added his mental health
Is that Steve?
to every school.
There you go. Hello, Steve.
Weren't sure.
Good morning.
We filled every position.
Oh, yeah, you're up on the big screen. It looks better on the big screen than it does on the computer's monitor.
First day of school.
Yes.
We filled that.
Your tie's not in focus.
You're talking about Steve's tie?
Yeah.
It's not in the picture.
We're trying something new today. I actually was supposed to be in Tampa for a meeting earlier this week and couldn't get up there, so we tested the technology and I presented at an investment advisory committee for the Florida Palm Investment Committee for the Board of Trustees meeting online. So we had this meeting today and we thought we'd try bringing PFM in electronically and see how it goes. They're going to do a couple of short presentations. Steve's going to talk a little bit and then Laura Howe's going to talk a little bit. So rather than make them both all drive down and up, we thought we'd try this and see how it works.
It really works, though there's a danger. Steve got caught tieless. Yeah, we don't know what's under the table.
Now, for Steve to hear you, you have to talk into the mics. But anytime you talk in the mics, he's going to be able to hear you.
Oh, all right. He's probably happy you missed that.
No, I heard that.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, it's great the way you were nonplussed by it. All right. Let's call the Finance Committee meeting of December 6th to order. And let's start off with introducing ourselves. Welcome all. We'll start over here. Mike?
Good morning, Mike Burke, CFO.
Paul Dumars, Finance Committee member.
Bill McDaniel, Finance Committee.
Michael Kohner, Finance Committee.
Rick Miller, Finance Committee.
George Elmore, Finance Committee.
Leanne?
Oh, Leanne Evans, School District Treasurer.
Ron Horan, Treasury Department.
Or Littlejohn from the Office of General Counsel.
And we have with us? Good. Welcome all. Clearly we have something on the agenda. The bankers showed up today. Okay.
Part of that's breakfast.
Is that part of
And it's the
breakfast?
thing, well, and I want to make sure I mention this, that once a year we do the full-blown breakfast to thank all of you, the committee members, our advisors, the underwriters, bankers, everyone that we work with, for all the work that you do to help us be successful every year. So thank you all very much. And that, Rick, if you want to go ahead and...
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And I want to say thank you. It was a beautiful breakfast.
Good.
It lasted a little bit longer than we thought, but we were having a good time.
Yeah.
So appreciate that. It's always nice. So our first order is approval of the agenda. Any comments on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Approval of the minutes of October 25. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. So our investment bankers, you have anything to say?
Oh, they're quiet.
You're welcome.
So then we're up to item 1, but let's see. I guess I have a public comment, and that's I just wanted to congratulate Paul Dumars, who the South Florida Water Management won the Southeastern U.S. region for the best bond deal of the year.
Wow, congratulations.
Something that
Solid Waste Authority.
did I say South Florida Water Management?
Yeah, you did.
Oh,
That was
geez.
in 2000.
That's some years ago. We won it in 2000. We won the whole thing in 2007. But this was, the SWA won it, the Southeastern region, and the Gale up in New York on Wednesday night. And so that was quite a to-do.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So it's second time around. Same thing with David Moore.
Yep.
So at the PFM. So all good things. annual investment report. That's the first item.
Okay, and we've done one investment report, and I think Steve's going to drive on this. We've combined our reports, there we go, that's the investment one. We've combined what we usually do and what PFM does to try to create an annual investment report that consolidates everything. So, Steve, I'm going to let you take it.
All right, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, sounds good.
My tie is still in the car, Rick, so I'll get it back later.
Okay. Well, I left my badge in the car, so there.
Oh, no.
And I have next to me Sean Gannon here is with me, and then also Laura Howell is in the frame as well, and she'll be part of today's presentation. So the whole gang is here for you. We'll start off with the annual investment report. As Leanne said, we did combine the report today in one package. The big highlight probably for the annual report is here on page 4 on the lower left-hand corner. Leanne and I and staff have been working on trying to put everything together so we have a comprehensive review of the investments for the last 12 months, ending June 30th. We start off with the long-term portfolio. This is the core portfolio. As you know, this portfolio is invested a little bit less than 2 years. It has about $40 million in the portfolio. And as of recently, Leanne and I have been reviewing the cash flow analysis, and we are going to add more money to the core portfolio. In fact, it's being done as we speak, simply because of the difference in cash flow this year versus previous years. It makes sense. Also, given where interest rates have been moving over this past year, given the fact that the Federal Reserve has cut rates 3 times, the curve is pretty flat, it makes sense to increase the core portfolio. Not that we're market timers, but given the cash flow analysis, given the yield curve analysis, it makes sense to do that. The last 12 months, the return and the benchmark are pretty much on top of each other. We had, of course, a very interesting year with rising interest rates, and then, of course, the Fed cutting interest rates starting in year of 2019. So we had both actions this year, rising interest rates and cutting interest rates, all in the last 12 months. So it's been a volatile year from the Federal Reserve standpoint, and the total return is, like I said, in line with the benchmark. From an absolute standpoint, the core portfolio, of course, is the highest performing investment strategy out of all the investment strategies. And as we've always said over the years, that the long-term portfolio on a long-term basis will outperform all the short-term assets, and this continues to be proven true despite the fact that the Fed has been raising interest rates over the last 4 or 5 years. So that's represented there. The second part of that table represents the short-term assets that has a combination of what's in the bank. There's quite a sizable dollars in Wells Fargo for a variety of reasons. Of course, as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, more money is going to be maintained in the bank accounts. You'll notice that the 2 LGIPs, the Florida Palm and the Florida Prime, are well outperforming the short-term benchmark, which is the S&P Local Government Investment Pool Index. It's a 30-day yield. That's a good, appropriate, nationally recognized benchmark for short-term. Very appropriate to compare against the 2 other LGIPs. Of course, the short-term portfolio was invested during the time when interest rates were moving up, so that's going to be a little bit lagging the benchmark as well as the TANs. And then, of course, you'll see the 2 Wells Fargo cash balances. So all in all, given the fact that we went through rising interest rates and interest rates being cut all within the same fiscal year, I think both strategies have performed pretty well in line given the volatility that we've experienced this past year. For the overall distribution of the assets, As of June 30th, you'll see the maturity distribution on the upper left-hand corner. As you notice that as we get to June, there's a sizable short-term assets. And then you'll see the investment portfolio composition. Again, this contains all the assets for the district, as well as a debt portfolio on the far right.
And the debt portfolio, I just point out that that's money for the August 1st debt service payment. We have to send that money up in June. So it goes up high, then it drops back down. It's
This
only
is
there
your
for-
debt service fund?
Right. It's only there for about a
Exactly.
month, but it looks like a big number. It's June 30th.
And then it goes away pretty quickly. From an asset allocation standpoint, you'll see here on this page 6 of the presentation, U.S. Treasuries being a sizable amount of the portfolio, followed by commercial paper, which of course is a very important investment tool for the district because it's short-term, and obviously the vast majority of the assets are needed to be short-term to meet all the debt obligations of the district. So commercial paper is a very important aspect of the investment strategy, followed by the various money markets and, of course, a very sizable amount in the local government investment pools, which provides lots of liquidity and diversification, as well as high-grade commercial paper in those pools. So overall, that's the overall asset allocation, and as of June 30th, just a little bit over $1 billion.
So the money markets are really limited nowadays, I guess, as far as use.
Right, and we really only
Yes.
use money markets with short-term balances at TD Bank or at Bank of New York. So some of the trustee dollars, anytime there's money up there for any length of time, it's invested in a pool or a very safe money market fund, a government money market fund. TD Bank utilizes them, and typically there's not much money there. We'll send money up, or we'll have an investment mature, and PFM will invest it the next night, and overnight it's placed in a money market, but it's very limited.
That's correct. Yeah, we've, over the years, based on the Money Market Reform Act, have shifted those assets into the LGIPs because they're at amortized cost as opposed to fluctuating net asset value. And then the rest of the report is really just the detailed holdings. All the securities that the district holds are delineated in these following pages. It's the quite detail that Leanne keeps on an ongoing basis.
And that is the same information you saw in the June 30 quarterly investment report. It's just now summarized as part of the annual report.
Right. And so that really completes the annual report. The next pages is what you saw really as of the June 30th report. That's the for the long-term portfolio. As we see here, the long-term portfolio has an effective duration on the far left-hand column at 1.47 years. That is going to be increased here over time as we add in new assets to the core portfolio. We'll try to take advantage of a little bit additional duration exposure, probably by another 0.2 or so. So we'll get to closer to about 1.6 or 1.7 average duration as we add in new assets. Again, for the year, there's the returns, both on a quarterly basis throughout the fiscal year and the one-year number. You'll notice here on page 18 the capital appreciation, this change in value, the $341,000. That's really going to represent the fact that, as you know, interest rates were reduced 3 times this year. The curve has dropped compared to this time last year, as well as a kind of a flatter yield curve. So that means the market values have increased for the core portfolio. And over the last quarter, it was about $341,000 to produce a total earnings of almost a little bit over $500,000 of additional earnings back to the district. I'll touch on the last page here of the report. This is also a combined presentation From a compliance standpoint, these are the permitted investments that the district is allowed to utilize. The gold bars in the upper part of the chart represents the maximum maturities allowed, maximum percentages of investment allowed by investment type, and the blue represents the actual utilization of those assets in each of those categories. And you'll see that the vast majority, as I pointed out before, is going to be in the pools, the treasuries, followed by the bank deposits. Everything was in compliance with the investment policy as of June 30th. And then this page will then show the detailed holdings by security type. And this is also a combined presentation, both the short-term and long-term, and all the investment policy requirements as far as asset allocation, individual issuer limitations, as well as the overall percentage allocation are all in compliance with the investment policy. Mr. Chairman and Leanne, that pretty much highlights the major aspects of the annual investment report ending June 30th.
Okay, and Steve, I'm going to pull up the information I sent to you to do cash flows. I have that on my screen, so you're not going to see it for a minute. You won't be able to see it, but I'm going to pull it up for the group so they can see
Okay.
what we did this week. Let's see, that's your screen. Let's see if I can shrink it down. I think there's a way to shrink it. Let's see. How can I
Why don't you just make
right
it
here?
disappear? Won't the other one come up?
No,
there?
that's his screen.
Okay,
That's on his screen.
okay.
So I need to shrink. I don't know if there's a way to grab.
This one? Go ahead, very corner.
Well, it's not this. I'm trying to get his whole screen to go away so I can pull up something else. I don't want to.
Okay, if you hit that
The
one.
screen, can you move it?
Go ahead.
Oh, I think I closed it.
I don't think it did. It's one of these. That's what
Okay, so this is, every day, I brought this screen up before, and I don't want to bring up the giant spreadsheet for any length of time, but we're tracking all the investments, every transaction in or out for the district for cash flow purposes, and this is a huge spreadsheet, but we pull it together to get a summary, and then we look at this graphically. So what we're looking at, right here, you'll see a very, very thin green line, and I'm going to try to make this bigger if I can. This was December 4th, and we received the first big tranche of property tax revenues that day. So we have sent that up to the trustee, and PFM is working to invest that. We have another large piece that's due on December 11th, and the next large one is December 26th. So we actually have plans in place for each day of exactly what's happening. So one of the things we've done is increase the size of the core portfolio by $40 million. We've essentially doubled it. If you recall, it used to be in the 80s, and we brought it down to $40 million a few years ago. And so we put $40 million back into that so it can be invested a little bit longer. We put $109 million into the Florida Palm term product, which locks in an investment rate. I believe it was 1.73% until June 4th, which is when we make the June debt service payments. And then $560 million went into the short-term portfolio. We have another $200 million, I think, that'll be going in on, it comes in on the 11th. We never know how much we're getting until the day before. So right now it's I'm guessing at what we think we'll get, but we'll find out the day before. And initially we started off saying that money would go out further into August or September. Given the flat yield curve and some uncertainty as to when some sales tax monies might be spent for some big projects that are ongoing, I'm probably going to have this money mature in March or April and then reinvest it if it's still available. So going back to this chart, my goal here is to try to keep the cash, which is what's in green, down below this at the white line. The white line is indicating 2 weeks worth of expenditures. So the big spike is 2 weeks surrounding when we have to make the debt service payment in June, and 2 weeks surrounding the maturity of the TAN. Each of those is a little over $100 million. So we're trying to keep this, just like you've got it here, this is our projection. And you see, this is all the short-term investments that are being done with the tax revenues. You'll see the core went from the 40 million up to, it's to 80 million. So we were trying to do that as quickly as possible this year. Everyone received tax revenues at the same time. Mr. Elmore was asking about tax revenues, and I had a conversation with Steve Lenahan. He's with Wells Fargo, and they bank the tax collector and a lot of the government. So he's seen all the cash come in and then go out to somebody else's account, and there's a lot of cash movement this time of year. I'm sure Paul's got the exact same thing at Solid Waste Authority. So we're all trying to get money invested as quickly as we can to lock in the rates that are available in case there is another rate cut, which I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we keep hearing there might be one more. So we've got it all locked in. So I just wanted to bring that up for you so you could see exactly what we've been doing. Steve, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think probably the most important thing to add to Leanne's discussion is that I think we've been very organized this year. We've been ahead of the mad rush that, like Leanne's talking about. This is a very difficult few weeks as we get to the end of the calendar year. Buying commercial paper is a very challenging part of the investment process, simply because everyone in the fixed income market is trying to buy commercial paper to end up the year as part of the window dressing on portfolios, part of financial statement window dressing. So there's a lot of demand on short-term fixed income securities, so it's important to get out there ahead of the rest of the market, and I think we did a good job in doing that this year as we been laying out a strategy, and Leanne's got it pretty organized, and we're executing trades as we speak.
Excellent.
Okay, so any questions on the annual investment report?
Good job during difficult times.
It gets harder every year, honestly, to try to make sure that we can get investments placed, because with the reduction of the issuance of agency securities, and this time of
And then
year.
the money markets are pretty much out.
Money markets are pretty much out, and this time of year, a lot of companies aren't issuing commercial paper. So this is the time we all get our money, and they're not issuing. So it's a challenge every year, try to get it placed, and it seems like it gets harder every year.
Steve, there were recent rules a couple of years ago, I think, on money market funds that hurt the ability to invest. They have to have total security.
Yeah, so the Money Market Reform Act really changed the way prime money market funds are calculating their market value. In other words, prime money market funds used to be a net asset value of $1 in, $1 out. After the Money Market Reform Act, they now have to calculate a share value on a daily basis. So that share value is no longer always $1. And many short-term money market fund investors have pulled their money out from those type of money market funds and went into government money market funds, because government money market funds still have a net asset value equal to $1, so they're using amortized cost. When that Reform Act was put in place, close to $1 trillion left the prime money market funds seeking government money market funds, and that was a major disruption in the marketplace, leaving those prime money market funds either to close their doors or to merge or just have smaller amount of assets available.
Yeah, that's a situation where regulation and rules really trumped a valuable resource, seems.
When we look at money market funds, we were using it for overnight liquidity, because that's extra cash that might be used for payroll in a day or two.
Right.
We can't take a chance that we won't get in we won't get back what we put in. That floating net asset value was really a game changer for governments in the way we use money markets. It doesn't work for us anymore unless it's a government money market that still has that stable net asset value.
Okay,
Okay, so the
up
next,
to the new, or the
the investment policy.
changes in investment policy.
And I want to just go through, when we did the investment policy last year, we looked at it in December, and we brought it into you again in March, and we had some changes. We looked at it. We actually haven't taken those changes to the board yet. What I've figured out is the board doesn't necessarily want to see it every year. It takes about 4 to 6 months to get a policy through. So the changes we recommended last time, we haven't implemented. I mean, if it's something, if we went more, we always went to more conservative. So the biggest change we requested last time was a small amount allocation to supranationals, and we haven't turned that on yet. My plan is to go ahead, we've got one more change in here this year that I've made, and then we're gonna bundle this all up and take it into the board. So what I'd like to do is focus really on the change that we made that's new, that you haven't seen before. Steve, can you, I can't scroll this, I think you've got the screen. We're gonna go down to, when we talk about benchmarks. I think that section, yeah, keep going. What I added in here was to exclude cash. When we looked at the short-term portfolio, one of the things that we were struggling with is to give you a total, to give you the yield on those short-term investments and the short-term portfolio in its entirety. And the benchmark is assuming we're investing out for 30 days, and we're not. For cash purposes, we're keeping money in the bank to cover payroll. So when we look at the short term specifically, what I've done in here is the comparison of the short-term portfolio to the index should not include overnight funds, which are maintained to ensure a prompt payment of the district's current obligations. So I've added in that sentence. And we're going to work to try to figure out how to calculate that.
How do you do that?
Well, that's a challenge that I'm going to be working on in the next couple of weeks. So before this actually goes to the board, we're going to test it to make sure we can do it.
Going to try to average that out because it's going to fluctuate.
I think what we're going to do is track cash, because we do this in a system called Simpro. And I think what we'll do is move the cash into a separate portfolio within Simpro. So it's isolated and everything else is lumped together.
And you
So we'll
don't
be able
count
to
it.
see it. Because when we tried to do the comparison, it really doesn't work. We've got overnight money being lumped into a benchmark that's for 30 days. And while I'd love to have less money in the bank, our payroll and all the things that go along with it is over $60 million. And that's every 2 weeks. I can't lock that in for a month. So when we start looking at those numbers and trying to be realistic, and I want to make sure that when we're managing the investment portfolio and the short term, we're making a much more concerted effort to try to match these things and to try to compare with a benchmark. We have such a large amount that we're keeping in overnight money or very short. The other big piece of it is sales tax. We have a lot of money in sales tax right now. Those bills come in sporadically, and I still don't have really good cash flows as to when bills will come in. So that means I'm keeping a lot more very liquid in pools. We're keeping basically 2 weeks worth in the bank and then a month's worth in overnight pools.
Wow.
So when there's that much money in overnight investments, there's no way to meet the benchmark requirements. So
Any comments on that notion? I guess we're really just excluding the really short term from the calculation of your
Right.
performance.
right.
But how do you measure that performance on the short term stuff?
Well, the short term, the bank, the rates we're getting from the bank is based on the contract that we negotiated. So for Wells Fargo, it's Fed funds less 25 for the earnings credit, and then Fed funds or maybe it's Fed funds less 10 and then Fed funds less 25. Fed funds less 10 for the earnings credit, the balance is in the bank to offset the bank fees, and then Fed funds less 25 for any excess cash. So
You know what that is.
we know what that is. It's based on Fed funds. It's a very competitive rate. So we're comfortable with that, but it doesn't necessarily compare well with the benchmark
Right.
because it's overnight. And the pools are actually doing very well, or over the last year, they did very well compared to the benchmark, but there's no guarantee that's going to continue. There's a lot of overnight liquidity in those pools. So one of the options we do have, and Steve and I were talking about it earlier, I think we definitely need to keep the banks out of the comparison. The pools, we could probably leave them in, but it just, so we could change it. And
Well,
I said,
it's a little unfair to leave one in and not the other, it seems.
right. Well, that's why when I was writing it, I said overnight funds are not included.
I guess the question really is whether it matters, I get that you're not making the benchmark, but it seems to me these are real monies.
They are.
And it is a real return. You're talking about whatever you get on your money,
Right.
no matter what the use is.
Well, and we're,
Part of it's balanced by these the local government pools that are higher, and the other part is the bank stuff that's lower.
Well,
So,
we
no,
can
no.
leave it in. I want to make sure the committee understands it's very difficult, if not impossible, the way we manage cash and the large amount we need to keep liquid. It's going to be nearly impossible to meet or exceed the benchmark because we have so much in liquid cash.
Yeah.
And we are earning interest on it. Every penny's invested. It's just not at a 30-day rate. It's more of an overnight rate.
How does the board feel about that? Any comments?
I mean, to put it in a policy, I mean, all you're doing is you're scorekeeping differently if you segment
And
into two different.
Right.
I mean, I think you just expand how you're showing your performance reporting.
Right.
I mean, it's, as you said, it's two different
Mhm.
metrics.
Right.
So I
Right.
think you should change the reports, not change the policy.
Well, the policy dictates how we're going to do it. This section is, in order to assist with the evaluation of the portfolio's performance, this is how you're going to break it out. So when I follow policy, I have to include all the short-term funds. Right now, it says anything designated as short-term and other funds must have a high degree of liquidity and will be compared to the 30-day yield. So that's why I just said the comparison shouldn't include overnight funds. So that's what this section is about. We'll still be reporting on it. It's not changing, it's changing the way the reporting is, but this is performance measurements.
Right. Paul, what do you do when you're on this type of thing, when you're trying to meet benchmarks and all over at the SWA?
We always keep it separate. We,
You do. You show the
so that.
overnight
As she
investment stuff.
said, you have to, make payroll and so forth, and so you can't put it in a 30-day.
Right.
You have to have it where you can
You have
get
to keep it liquid.
Yes.
And when you report, do you have a benchmark like this that's similar? So you don't have that concern?
I'm not aware of a benchmark. I would love to see a benchmark for overnight funds. I haven't seen that anywhere because most places don't get any interest on their overnight money.
Yeah. Not
But they still calculate it into the return, presumably.
Well, when we look at the overall return and in the investment report, we show the total interest earned, and we're tracking that on the chart. So it's not that we're ignoring it, it's just when we're comparing it to the benchmark, I'd like to exclude those to give us a better shot at trying to meet the benchmark.
Any thought about doing it with and without? In other words, showing with the money market funds and without?
For us to do that, we'd be keeping two sets of books. We'd have to have two different portfolios within Simpro and enter everything in twice, one where it's combined and one where it's not. So it becomes very labor intensive, and the chance of making a mistake in one and not in the other, I'd prefer not to do it. I'd like to have one way of doing it. And we can leave it, leave the cash in, and just need to, I may instead add a sentence in there, explaining. I want to make sure the board understands when they look at this report and we're following policy, a lot of our money is not 30-day money. So we're setting ourselves up to not compare well with that benchmark.
No, I know. I know. Steve, how do others handle this?
Most others actually exclude the cash. The cash that's held in the actual bank accounts are generally not part of the short-term portfolio performance calculation. Really, if you think about the money that the district has at Wells Fargo, is really subject to the contractual relationship between the district and Wells Fargo. So the actual rate that's being placed onto those assets is not driven by a daily market rate. It's driven by a contractual rate. Now, that rate does get reviewed during a banking RFP process, so it's updated and goes through a competitive process. But as far as Leanne having the ability to do something with that rate on a daily basis, she cannot because it's based on a contract. And then the dollar amounts that she has in those accounts really are an asset liability situation. So she has a very known set of liabilities, and she has an asset available there to pay off that liability. So from an actual investment performance measurement, it doesn't really compare well given those characteristics.
Yeah, good explanation.
Generally, that cash is excluded.
Okay. So that you're just going to be in line really with
With what everyone else is doing.
what the standard is.
Right.
Okay, sorry to intervene on that, but
No, that's okay. I wanted
it's
to
one
have the
thing to
discussion.
show it because it looks better. It's another thing to show it because substantively it ought to be that way.
I was just looking, when we tried to pull it all together with this report, and the number came in low, and I was asking, what are we missing? Because we're trying to actively manage these monies and to get the best possible return we can. And my question was, is the benchmark right? And Steve replied, this is the standard benchmark that's frequently used. The problem is we have a lot in cash because our payroll is so large and our daily payments of what's going in and out that's
Well,
in
I
the
think
bank
Steve
account is
said the
large.
standard is to exclude
Right.
these overnight funds,
I mean,
right?
the other way we could do it is where I could word it slightly different, where it says short-term funds and other funds and just say not including cash. I could shorten the sentence up instead of doing the long sentence I put in there. I could just do a comma and not including cash. Because it says it shall be compared to the rate.
What are you saying now?
Well, right up here where I've got the cursor at, it says investment performance of funds designated as short-term funds and other funds, could just add a comma, not including cash, comma, that must maintain a high degree of liquidity. That will then be compared to the return on the 30-day, the S&P.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I can
would
do it
say
that
excluding
way.
cash, funds, comma, excluding.
Right. And then
cash.
instead of doing the sentence, just do
Yeah.
excluding cash.
Yeah. How do people feel
That
about
works.
that?
That works? Okay, I'll make that change then. That was the only new change to the investment policy. Otherwise, it was still good as you'd approved it last year. So we'll get ready to take that into the board.
Okay.
Do we have a motion about that?
Yes, let's have a motion. Thank you,
So
Bill.
moved.
A second?
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, next item is.
Okay, now we're gonna switch over to debt. So, this is, I'm trying to do these in order to, make the most use of PFM staff's time. This is about the new COPS issue. We are actually ready to do a new money deal. The last one we did was the Q-SCIB in 2010, and before that, it was in 2007. So it's been a long time since we've done a new money debt issue. Laura's going to go through this, and I'll probably chime in quite a bit. There's some interesting things regarding the structure of the debt service that we'll talk about at the end, and I'm really curious about your feedback on that section. So Laura, you've got it?
Okay, good morning. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Laura.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to walk through this really quick, talk about the new money issue, and just do a brief market update, kind of to elaborate a little bit on what Steve was saying a little bit ago. The chart on the left, the AAA MMD that we often see, just shows you where we were a year ago, 6 months, a month ago, and the current. So we are pretty low compared to where we were a year ago. I don't know if you can see my cursor when I go through or not.
Yes.
Okay. And so then the chart on the right just shows the MMD ranges over the past year, and you can see it's really flat on the front end. On the long end, we are down near the historic lows, and on the front end, pretty flat. So as a whole, going out long-term debt, what Liam's looking at, it's still a very attractive time to be entering into the market. And this shows you that as well. The 10-year bond and AAA MMD, we're back hovering down near historic lows where we've been over the past 10 years. So to kind of dive into what we're doing, this is just a refresher of what we did after all of the refinancings in 2018. And the last one, we utilized the opportunity to go ahead and level out the debt service. It kind of popped around before where your maximum annual debt service was. So we took the opportunity to smooth it out, reducing it about $3 million a year. And as you see, it cliffs currently in 2030. But it's pretty smooth going through 2020 to 2029. And this just shows you the debt service going out where we currently are with the estimated taxable assessed values and the anticipated growth over the years at 50%, which is the ideal of where the board would like to stay of the 1.5 mil, so 0.75 mil usage. In 2019, we were right at it, but there's still capacity going out in the years moving forward. So this is getting into the issuances. The first one is in FY20, which we're planning on taking to the board in January to go ahead and issue in February. The project fund in all of these, as you're going to see in the slides coming up, stays the same. In 2020, we're estimating about $48 million of a project fund being issued. In 2021, fiscal year 2021, a little over $211 million. In 22, $57 million, and then waiting again until 2026 to issue another $137 million. Going through these slides, we have all the date and delivery date assumptions the same. You'll see in some of these the final maturities have changed.
Laura, excuse me, Laura, are those proceeds, this first line project fund, that's proceeds rather
Yes,
than
that's
bonds?
the cost of the schools.
Right.
That's actually the money
Yes.
we'll be spending on the schools.
Right, so it's, the bonds are higher than that. The bond issues. would be
Right, so
higher.
you'll see down here
It will
in
be a
the
little
par
higher.
amount line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the par amount line is actually a little bit lower because we assume
Oh,
that they're issuing
I
at
see.
premium
Premiums.
coupons, which is where the market's running right now. 5% definitely after the call date. But this is the amount, the bond proceeds is right above that line. So
And
the
that's
project
higher to
fund
include
is-
the cost of issuance and the underwriter's
Right.
discounts.
Yeah, that takes the cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the final maturity for all of these, we assumed a 25-year, which is typical for issuing certificates of participation. Going through here, and you'll see over the years we showed what the MADS was going to be doing moving forward as an aggregate. So after the 2026 issuance, we're looking at the maximum annual debt service at about $172 million. So this shows you that same chart kind of up here, and we get into a little bit more detail, but you'll see, I think I'll just go ahead and flip to that. This is where we're potentially crossing over the 50% of the 1.5 mils. And part of the reason for that, and Leanne, elaborate further on this, is the portables that are being utilized that are going to be torn down after 2021. We wanted to make sure we put enough principal in the front years to be able to fully pay for that, which was the $12.8 million.
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit about that. The first COPS issue that we're doing, the one we're doing this year, includes the projects at Verity and Addison Elementary Schools. And both of those campuses are very small. We've had to build a temporary campus to house the students that'll be used by both of them. And the cost of that, that temporary campus will be there for 2 years. And it's embedded in these two projects, and it's split between them. I want to make sure we amortize the cost of that holding school over the first 2 years, so it's fully paid for before we take it down. And then that land where that portable school is, and a lot of the infrastructure will be used by a new school that'll be funded with the FY21 COPS. We're building an elementary school next to Don Estridge Middle School. That's where that holding school is right now. So some of the cost will result in savings on that next school, but we needed to capture it in here. So you do see the spike up in 2021. When we adopted the capital budget, we'd already had estimates of this, and I took it to the board and made sure they were aware that I actually thought it would be 2 years, but the interest rates have stayed so low and so attractive that it's helped. We're going to exceed it that 1 year. The board was actually asked if we needed to make a policy change, and we'll look at the debt policy in a few minutes, but it's there based on your advice, because I was going to lock it down. I remember saying, let's lock it down, and the committee said, no, you want to have some room to maneuver. So right now it's a goal of 50%, and that if we exceed it, we'll endeavor to get back below 50%. So the board was very comfortable with that, and I know the committee had indicated in the past that was where you'd want to go. So it would exceed it just over 1 year, and it's not a big amount.
And the rating agencies are okay with that?
They're okay because they can see what's coming, and they know it's a one-time transaction.
Any thoughts on that?
I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out, that I did talk with we brought that up with the board when we did the capital budget, and they were comfortable. They want to make sure these schools are built
Okay, yeah, we don't have a hard number on that
No.
50%.
And we're going to show you the debt policy in just a few minutes. You'll be able to see the language.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Yes, and definitely for the strength of the school district, the rating agency, especially just for 1 year being 50% over, they would have no issue with that. And for these structures, you can tell this was run just other than the uploading of the principal in 20 and 21, very basic level debt structure out 25 years stacked on top of one another, which is where you're getting up to the increased maximum annual debt service aggregate out here in 2029, and steps down as we've seen with how the debt is currently laid out. So the next scenario we looked at is a raft structure where you're throwing out the debt service in the later years where you have more capacity. So again, these project fund numbers are all the same. In this scenario, the final maturity is all the same as well. We are going out 25 years looking at this. And so the bond proceeds change very little as well. And you can see, though, in the aggregate maximum annual debt service, in 2026, it's at $163 million as opposed to the $172 that we were looking at with the level debt structure. So just in future years, it allows for a little bit more capacity for the district for additional needs or pay-go dollars as you're moving forward. So again, the same chart, and on here, we're crossing over the 50% in the 2021, again, for the same reasons that it's being pulled forward for the construction of the temporary school. But you'll see that it's a little bit higher here in 20, up to 120 and 130 because it's pulling it a little bit forward and a little lower on this area. This is really the structure that we wanted to get your thoughts on. We typically wouldn't recommend just a typical wrapped structure out 25 years. You know, level is very conservative moving forward. But we did look at an accelerated wrapped structure, which this is something with the 4 different issuances coming up at each time we could reevaluate and decide what's best on this. Again, the project fund's the same, but you'll see in here the final maturities do not go out 25 years. In the 2020 issue, it stops at 2032, so a much shorter maturity. And then instead of going out to 2050 in the fiscal year 26 issuance, it's going out to 2035. The maximum annual debt service is about the same on this, and that's because that's hitting in that 2021 year where we're crossing over, bringing the principal forward. But you'll see in this structure moving forward that it stays about that maximum annual debt service and drops off. So where the other scenarios you had debt service that continued out through 2050, this is really bringing it forward and starting in 2030 and kind of filling down through 2035 to keep this level. One of the reasons we looked at this is you'll see on the comparison for this, your total debt service with a level issuance is at $833 million, whereas an accelerated wrap, you're at $711 million. So there is significant interest savings when you're looking at pulling the debt service forward. Even though you're not paying principal in those first few years, you're paying off the block sizes so quickly that it's lowering the total cost for the district to borrow the money. There's a couple other things in thinking about this as well, and depending on the district's plans moving forward after the fiscal year 2026 issuance, you know, having a few scattered schools moving out far to 2020-50 on the master lease, it's still a strong credit, but when you have an all or none appropriation, if you only have 1 or 2 schools that are out that far, maybe in an area that, you know, has had some economic difficulties, it would raise questions to investors of whether or not you would continue to pay the debt. So kind of bulking it together provides a little bit more security for the investors as well. So pause and ask questions on this and get your thoughts, feedback.
Can you go back one slide, Laura, to the chart? Yeah, one of the things I
This
like
one?
to, yeah, that's it. I liked the idea, we had so much capacity available, and rather than spreading out that small amount, that small tail of debt service going out to 2050, we have capacity to pay that debt off sooner. And we're looking, our capital plan goes out 10 years at this point, and we've included all the schools that we know of we need to build. I am certain there will be more needs and more schools that we want to replace or build over time, but I don't foresee a huge building program anytime soon. Our enrollment's rather steady. I mean, all those things can change. And with each of these debt issues, we'll be bringing this back to you again to look at it. The focus right now is really just on the deal that's in green, which is the 2020 debt issue. So we look at each one of these individually as they go along. But I like the concept of taking advantage of the fact that we have all that capacity out there and trying to pay the debt off earlier instead of obligating the board and the citizens going out to 2050. If we have the capacity to pay for it sooner and it fits within the capital budget, to pay it off sooner. So I'm really curious at the thoughts of the committee as to where you think
Any comments?
the concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're
And
basically,
specifically-
go ahead, Laura.
Well, I was going to say, I can flip back and forth, but on the level structure for the 2020 issuance, your total interest is about $90 million, and on the accelerated wrap, you're at $64 million. So just, I mean, since we're looking at this one right now, and we would bring back the additional issuances, that's the difference in the green right now. If you're doing level or wrapped, is that $30 million of interest savings.
Wow, well, that's super.
It's real money.
Super. Basically, you're changing the average life of the new debt,
Yes.
right?
We're
And
shortening.
then the average of the whole portfolio,
Right.
basically.
Instead of 25 years, I believe this one's 13 years, if I counted right.
Yeah, so it would go, it would mature in 2032, and the average life on the accelerated wrap is 10.7 years. The level would go out to 2044, so you're shaving off 12 years on the debt service.
Yeah, this all makes sense. Any other comments on it? It's really a good idea. You got the capacity, so you're just making yourself use that, utilize the capacity.
I mean, the downside, I could argue that instead of taking all that money in 2030, you could shrink it back down and make it smaller, run it out longer, and take that money and use it for other needs. But that's a lot of money right there, and I think this is an effective way to use the district's money to go ahead and pay the debt down sooner.
The 30 million savings is net present value, or is that actual? That's actual savings, I guess.
Is that NPV savings or actual, Laura?
That was actual. That wasn't
Actual, so the
net present.
NPV is not going to be 30 million over that time. You have any idea what it is?
No, I can look into that.
Yeah, so it's not really 30 million bucks, but nevertheless,
And there's
makes sense.
Yeah, and there's still, this could be tweaked if you didn't want to go up to, 120, say right here. You could put a little bit more, and 31, 32 kind of still get the same results to have some sort of a level drop down right here.
Right.
So, maybe it doesn't spike so much in 2030, but we could level it out where it is in 2031 between those years as well. So there's things that we can play with if you're interested in that structure. And work with Leanne to find the best solution on how to do that for the district.
Yeah, I tell you, for the first 10 years, we have factored in level debt service into the capital plan. So the money in the capital plan covers any of these scenarios, but the capital plan doesn't go out to, it only goes out to 2029 right now. So this could certainly fit within the budget. I think we probably will go through and tweak it. I like the idea of having 20, 30, 31, 32, making them all level. But it's something we can tweak. And again, we can look at that. We will look at this again with every one of these debt issues that are coming. The amounts of those may change. 2021 includes 3 new schools. In theory, one of those may be shifted back. I don't think so. I think we're going to have a big issuance in 2021. So we'll look at this again. The question really is on this immediate debt issue that we're working on. And I like the idea of accelerating it and not running out 25 years. I mean, you go out 25 years if you can't afford to pay it sooner, and we can.
Right.
So
It's the concept, I think, rather than the detail. The detail, I think
is.
you should leave up to you, but the concept here obviously is to modify your debt service so that you take care of your capacity.
Right.
And it's not making a level debt service payment for these particular bonds. It's making a more level, a more sensible debt service schedule,
Right.
basically.
You know, and
So,
an
yeah,
added
seems-
bonus, it's not unreasonable to think that Leanne could not work to 2035. Another 15, 16 years, it's all paid for.
Yeah, there's been
Mike,
this
what do you
comment
say,
that I
Mike?
can't retire till all the debt's gone.
Oh, well then we're doing the wrong thing here, aren't we?
This is good.
So in general, it seems like the committee's okay with the idea of accelerating this and paying it off sooner, not running out the full 25 years.
It certainly makes sense.
The other challenge that I keep hearing rumors of is the idea of having a small amount out there. Go back to the level debt service chart that's like this, Laura. When there's a small amount outstanding, that whole concept, the master lease is all or none. So if we were to default in 2046, the investors are not going to be as comfortable because there's not a lot out there for us to lose, especially when you keep hearing more and more things about climate change and more hurricanes and more weather changes, having things out there going out longer and longer. That's starting to get some interest in the marketplace, so bringing it up shorter should also help us there, that we're just paying things off sooner. That's not the primary concern. It's just something that we're hearing in the market, the idea of paying this off sooner. It's going to be better from the investor's perspective, I
So
would
when
think.
things blow away, you can put some other buildings up. I guess that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Wow. Okay, I think the concept is good. What kind of approval do you need from us?
Well, we do need to get approval to move forward to the school board for approval for doing a debt issue.
The debt issue, and we're just talking about the,
And then we talk about the structure.
Structure of it.
I'd like to get approval to move forward with the COPS issue, and I'd like to get the approval for the concept of accelerating or doing a different debt service structure other than level,
Level
if we
debt
can make
service.
it work. I mean, it would
for
save money.
savings purposes.
For savings purposes.
Yes. Okay. Any motion to that effect?
Move it. Second it.
John?
Okay.
Or George? Okay, second?
Second. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll move it.
All right. Any further discussion? And I guess we're going to refine that, but we're going to go with a different type of, other than level debt service,
Right.
basically for savings and for the rational use of the money.
And what we'll do, we'll be working with the underwriter. This particular deal will be led by Bank of America Merrill Lynch. That's just the standard rotation that we have. And there'll be a team of underwriters. So between PFM and Bank of America, the rest of the team, and then I'll be working with Mike and looking at numbers for the district's perspective as well, what makes sense for us. So we'll work through all those components, and the plan is to have this ready to go to the school board at the January 22nd meeting. So our next meeting is February 14th. I don't know if this will be done or not. It depends on the timing.
Probably that's Valentine's Day, isn't it?
That's Valentine's Day. That's the meeting. So we may be priced and done before we have that next meeting.
Okay, probably, it sounds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so the next thing, and Steve, do you want to keep running it this way, or do you all want to sign off and let me take it over from here? I can do it either way.
Whatever is your pleasure, we can just keep running it.
Okay. If you all want to sit through it, we can do it. So the annual debt report is one that you see every year. There's not a significant change from last year because we really haven't done any new debt issues. We've had an equipment lease and the TAN that we do every year. But this is a good document that updates everything for you. I'll always point out, we go through the reasons of why we issue debt, the different types of debt, the board members. We have done over 78 transactions, and we have a total of $7.5 billion worth of transactions. The present value savings is the same as last year, $162 million. And every time I report that to the board or anyone, I give a lot of that credit to this committee, because we would never have been able to do some of the complex transactions we've done over the years without this committee reviewing everything. Okay, on to the next page. It just listed the people on the team. And then this is just the history of debt service. None of this has changed. So I'm going to skip over this and go through this very quickly. It just shows why we issued in the seats. Now, for next year, it will change because we'll have done a new money debt issue. So we'll be updating all these charts before you see this again next time. We just mentioned that the sales tax had been approved. This is the chart that shows that I like to show. The green is where we would be with 2 mills, and the blue is the 1.5 mills. We still miss that half mil that the legislature took away from us. But so we continue to track that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And this chart over here we were adding because we keep getting comments. There's some misunderstanding out there that people think when we did all the refinancing that we were extending the maturity of the debt, and we've never done that. We've always tried to keep the final maturity the same, and by doing a refunding, we're actually reducing the amount of debt outstanding. We've never extended a maturity on a debt issue. So, and sometimes we've actually sped it up. So you'll see we went from almost $2 billion, and we're down to $1.3 billion at this point. So we've been steadily paying it off. And this is the long-term borrowing capacity. You've seen this many times, and you saw that today. Looking at it was more detailed, showing every transaction, but it shows that we're skirting right along the edge, but we have lots of capacity later. So what we've talked about doing is instead of having all this blue that's out in the out years, instead it's going to be stacked up here to keep this more level and accelerate the debt service payments. Okay, you can keep going. So this is these are just the different types of debt issues, and for each one, there's no new debt issues until we get to the leases, and I'll stop at that one. But we kind of go through each one and talk about how they're done and the amount outstanding. For the TANs, of course, we updated it for the new one. But there's nothing really exciting in this one except, go back one page, Steve, the page where we had the hedges.
Hedges, yeah.
The hedges are all gone now. So we used to have all those drawings, the schematics of the hedges. We closed them all out in 2018. So they are no longer in the report. We've just said that they've all been terminated. So the report shrunk by 3 pages this year.
Let me ask Steve, is there any genuine good use of these hedges nowadays?
Or Laura may be able to chime in.
Or Laura.
Are people doing hedges right now?
Yeah, I think as a whole, people, because they were so burned from them in the past, they shy away from them.
Yeah.
They make sense to enter into right now, but I think because of what's happened historically, issuers are avoiding them.
No, I get that. I'm just wondering if there's any legitimate use that doesn't have that huge risk. I guess if you could get a hedge without having to have backup, it might work.
Well, I know one of the things that happened with Dodd-Frank, the reporting requirements also became very challenging. So I know our accounting and budget team were very, very happy when the hedges went away. And every time we talk about doing new debt, the first question is, you're not doing swaps, right? You promised us no more swaps. So they really do not want us to go there. There'd have to be a really good reason.
At the end of the day, we made good money, though.
We did. It was over $42 million of the savings on those transactions.
Right.
So I don't talk negatively about them.
That's really why.
We did them at the right
I get
time.
it, but-
It saved a lot of money. It did the right thing, and we got out of them at the right time.
Yeah.
So we're not, at this point, we're not looking to go into another swap. That doesn't mean we'd never do them again.
I get the black mark on the whole thing and the rest of it, but it seems like there might be a use for it at some point in time.
Yep. Okay, ratings have not changed. We will be doing, and Moody's has asked for a full credit review. They haven't done a full credit review on us in a number of years. It's been shortened, abbreviated versions. So we'll be doing that with this next COPS issue. And I think we're working with Moody's and Fitch at this point on that transaction. So before we meet again, we will have done a full rating review. And then this is the definitions. And then I think we get into the charts after this. So this one shows, and there's a couple of pages, this shows the facilities that were financed. this document, we refer to this all the time. I know Blair uses it quite frequently whenever we're looking at doing something at a facility. We want to know where the ground leases are. So this is tracking the ground leases that exist with our master lease. And then if you keep going, the next chart, I believe, is the debt issue list. Let's see if I remembered it correctly. Yeah, this is what I call the Finance Committee brag sheet. So if you go down to the end of this report, one more, I think. Yeah, that's where we come up with the total savings. So it shows the total amount of new money that we've done since 2000, September 2000, the amount of the refundings, the amount of the swaps, total transactions of 7.8 million, and the present value savings of 162 million. So this committee is certainly to be credited for a lot of the work that we've done, that we've all done together. And the same with the committee, with the advisors, the underwriters. It really is a team effort.
I have to say that I think you and Mike are really very helpful in guiding us to those determinations, and that you utilize this committee very well in getting its expertise.
It really
but
is
you
a
also
team.
help lead it, and so does Steve Way and PFM,
Yep.
on the finance side.
It takes a team. Without you all, we couldn't do it.
And
Okay.
vice versa.
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry you can't see this. When it's printed, it's a little bit easier to read. But this is the report that, again, I utilize this all the time. And I don't know if you can make that any bigger. There we go. For each debt issue, it has the series, the issue date, who the senior manager was. Go to the next page again. There we go. It shows the original principal. The principal outstanding is of June 30, which is the date of the report. I also add August 1st because we make that debt service payment so soon after the end of the fiscal year. That's the number I'm really looking at. Final maturity, if it's fixed or variable, and these are all fixed at this point, the interest rates, if there was a bond insurer, which all of our bonds are now uninsured. We have no bond insurance at this point. Our credit rating is higher than most of the insurers. We also goes through and it talks about the insurer rating if there was one. It gets into call dates over here and then any notes. So, for example, this transaction I'm looking at, 2015B, it refunded the 2006A transaction. So it's a good way for me to follow through. And this is definitely a management tool that we use on a daily basis to track it. We added this year, whether it was a public transaction or a direct placement, there was new accounting rules. There was a new GASB update that required that we break that out. So now we're tracking that as well, whether it was a public offering or direct placement. And then whether or not it's hedged, and those are all no's. And then the arbitrage yield, the computation dates, because we're tracking that as well. Arbitrage has not been an issue in the past, but it will be going forward, and it will be an issue for the QSCIB when we get to that for next year. And we'll talk about that more as we get closer. Because of sequestration and the investment window was closed to buy slugs on a day when we needed to. We've earned some interest, more interest than we should have. So we'll be having to rebate some money to the IRS for that. So we're keeping an eye on it already. It doesn't happen. There's no impact that we have to do anything right away, but we'll be tracking it.
How much is that you're going to have to rebate?
I don't know the amount. PFM is actually running calculations for us right now, and we'll be setting it aside in a liability account.
And this from construction money?
It's the QSCIB. We spent all the money and time, but the problem is there's arbitrage and yield restriction on that transaction, and we were supposed to put some money in a 0% slug, a state and local government unit with the Treasury, and the Treasury window was closed at the time.
I see. So you couldn't
I couldn't do what I needed
average
to
down
do.
your arbitrage.
Right. So now we have interest earnings that we shouldn't have had. So we'll have to rebate some money to the IRS. And it's several years from
But that's
now.
over a period of time.
It
so
is.
that you average it. And
It is, but
okay.
we start tracking it right away so that we know what it is, and we set the liability up so that it's noticed, it's in the financial statements, that we all know it, we can't forget it. There's no way we'll miss that payment when we have to do it.
Can't you average down now with some of your investments?
No, because it's got we had a forward delivery agreement in place, so the interest rate was already locked in.
Oh, I see.
So unless we tried to break that, and we don't really.
Negotiate.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We've actually had both sides of PFM as well as bond counsel and disclosure counsel all on calls, trying to figure out the best option. And they're still working through that. There's a handful of issuers throughout the country that are in this bucket, and they're trying to work with the IRS to see if they'll give us an exemption because we couldn't do what we had committed to do. So we're working through that. There's no action for the committee or for us right now. We're just trying to work through it.
Seems like somebody on the other side would be happy to get pay less interest.
Right.
Seems like that wouldn't be that hard a negotiation.
Yeah, well, at the time, when we had the discussion, that wasn't an option. Barclays is the one that owns it, and they didn't think they'd want to negotiate it downward. But it's something we're going to continue to look at. We have time. This goes out to 2027, I believe. So we have some time to work. It's 2025. It happens to be up.
How much are we talking about?
Oh, the whole transaction was $67 million, and what should have gone into this, the slug was $3 million. So it's the return on that. So it's
Okay,
not
it's
a
not
lot
that
of
much.
money. It's not a lot of money. It's just something that we're tracking.
I got it.
But it shows how we are using this report to track and know when those ARB dates, when those arbitrage rebate dates are, the calculations. Trying to make sure we stay on top of that and aren't surprised by anything. And I think that's the end of the report.
Can you help us convert this for personal purposes?
What do you mean?
I'm only kidding.
Okay.
It's a great way to calculate your debt, see where it is, and what you owe, and how to save.
Well, this was required. It's required in the debt policy. The debt policy lists certain things that we have to report to you.
Right.
And as we've moved and changed things throughout the year, we continue to update that report.
Right.
It really is a working document that we
Yeah.
use, and I use in my office all the time.
Right.
So every time something new comes up, like a new GASB pronouncement where we need to break apart public offerings versus direct payments, we're going through and adding that in there so that we're not having to recalculate it every year.
Terrific. Great report. So that's the, and then
That's
the
the annual
debt
debt
policy
report.
is the.
Yeah, so the policy's next, and there's only one change here. So Steve, if you could start scrolling down, and it really is just something that Ritesh Patel came up with. Under short-term debt, it's right in there. So for short-term debt for RANs and TANs, certain bond anticipation notes and revenue anticipation notes may have a final maturity greater than 1 year. What he added in here was just in parentheses, if extended from year to year as permitted by acceptable law. So it was just clarification. There's nothing of any really significance in this policy that we're changing. It was just a little bit of clarification.
Certain bond anticipated notes and revenue.
So these are RANs. So they could have even though it's a 1 year note, it can be extended from year to year. So we had said in there, it could have a final maturity greater than a year. And he suggested, rightfully so, that we add that in parentheses. We'd have to go and extend it. When you do a RAN or a TAN,
These have to be maturing in a year,
they
right?
mature in a year, but for a RAN, you can renew it. You can go out and do another one. You can roll
But isn't
them
that
up to 5
kind of a
years.
refinancing? Isn't that a new RAN then, or no?
It is, but they call it it's an extension. They call it a roll. So if we did a RAN, we could just roll it into another RAN at the revenue
Have a
anticipation
final
note, and
maturity
you can
period.
do up to
But
5 years.
They really don't have a final maturity than 1 year, do they?
I think you said it could have a final maturity great, because if you have a RAN and we do it and we did this with the last sales tax, we did a RAN, it was for we did a 1 year, then we rolled it into a second year. So it's just the concept, they can extend up to 5 years by law.
I see.
But we'd have to renew them every year. We'd bring it back to the committee and the
Right.
board to do it.
Right.
But it's the concept that it could be more than 1 year if they're extended. So we just added that clarification.
Well, it's a funny thing. I think these things, when you have a revenue anticipation note, you're supposed to pay it back within the year, right?
You can
So
pay it.
technically, how that works is within 365 days, the final maturity can't be longer than that. However, if you issue $100 million in a revenue anticipation note, you technically could roll that whole $100 million to the next year, and do that up to 5 years and just pay the bullet at 5 years. Some tax counsel says that you need to do 20% of it every year, so that by the end of 5 years, it's fully paid down.
Yes.
But in a sense, you don't have to do anything. You kind of enter into the agreement with the bank knowing that it would roll for every year for 5 years.
Oh.
So the payment terms are legally you don't have to pay
Well, you're really
anything.
financing a deficit over
It's the
5 years, possibly. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
Essentially, yes.
And that's okay. That's why you have this as permitted by applicable law.
Right. When we were looking at the financing for the sales tax,
Mm-hmm.
we looked at that, and we looked at Iran. We actually looked at Iran as one of the options. We decided against it because there's an issuance cost every year as opposed to what we did with the line of credit that's just available to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a better idea, actually.
It's just another option that's out there. We used it with the last sales tax.
Mm.
We had projects that we had planned to finance with COPS, and the market was uncertain. It was the very beginning of the recession. It was 2007, 2008. So we did Iran, and the plan was to take it out with a COPS issue, and then the legislature reduced our taxing authority, so we didn't have capacity to borrow anymore. So we actually refinanced. We paid off the TAM with sales tax proceeds and used sales tax to pay for the projects. But we didn't know exactly what we were going to do, and at the time, the RAN worked great, and it was there for 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Any comments?
So that's the only change I have to the debt policy.
That's
It's
it?
pretty simple.
All
There's-
right, so we'll approve, Mike? Second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, happy
The only other
holidays.
thing I wanted to mention, if you scroll down just a little bit, we have the future meeting dates out there, and the next one is Valentine's Day. It's on the next page. So the dates for all of 2020 are listed there, and
Okay.
I haven't sent the calendar items out for next year. I'll make sure I do that this afternoon, so they show up on your calendar and you've got them blocked off.
And Bill Moore didn't make the meeting today, did he?
He is traveling with his family. He's due back next week.
Okay,
So he sent his regards that he was going to be out of town.
all right. So he missed the Christmas. He doesn't usually do that.
He's usually
I was gonna
here,
say.
but he
We could save some and
Can you save, put some aside?
I don't think
Freeze
he's
it?
going to want some conscript.
All right, if there's nothing further, then we're adjourned.
We're
Thank you,
adjourned.
Mary.
Everybody have a wonderful
Merry Christmas.
holiday.
Good holiday.
Merry Christmas, Steve. Merry Christmas, Laura.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.